All right.
Okay. So, Jen, I'm going to send you some PowerPoints, some slides. If you could just have them up.
Mhm.
It's just, you'll see.
Oops.
So if you could.
Sorry, I'm in the wrong window here. All right. Oh, it's making me request access.
Of course it is. It's always the issue. Okay, so you should have it.
All right, I'm in.
All right, cool.
All right.
Excellent. Okay, so I'm going to start. Thank you everyone for attending our second annual ASPA Cascade Student Symposium. As you have noticed, this will be recorded so you can share broadly with your colleagues, mentors, advisors, or anyone who may be interested, because today we are discussing democracy. Now, let me just tell you a little bit about ASPA Cascade. So ASPA Cascade serves all of Oregon, Jen, and then the southwest or the southern region of Washington. We are currently recruiting both board members and officers for our chapter. You do not have to live in this region. You just have to simply have an interest. It's a great way to get connected and to participate in some of our endeavors. Some of our initiatives that we take on include infusing social equity into our strategic planning, and we also try to keep a focus on practical issues facing public administrators in both rural and urban areas. So, like I said, thank you all for joining us for today's presentation about democracy at all levels of government. So I'm just going to give my quick intro, and then this is the order of events. We'll start with Kelsey, then David will present, and then Ina. So after each presentation, we will allow about 5 to 10 minutes of questions and comments, and then we'll just have a general discussion afterwards. So in democratic societies, public administrators often grapple with how to translate policy and regime values into praxis. Values such as equality and accountability are often interpreted and renegotiated, with equity taking precedence over equality in recent governance. These issues are experienced at all levels of government internationally. Thus, the following questions arise. How do we create institutions that meaningfully produce democratic outcomes? How do we ensure accountability to the community at large? Can the promotion of democracy survive when institutions have been crystallized with a different approach? These are questions that we hope to delve into today. So we will be starting with Kelsey Edmond. Kelsey Edmond is a doctoral candidate in public policy at the University of Massachusetts in Boston. She is a mixed methodologist with an emphasis on computational social science methods. Her dissertation explores how to best design sustainable digital equity policies in the era of COVID-19. She holds a Bachelor's of Science degree in organizational community leadership and a Master's of Public Administration with a focus in social innovation from the Joseph R. Biden Jr. School of Public Policy and Administration at the University of Delaware, and a Master's of Public Policy degree from the University of Massachusetts in Boston. Kelsey also has experience conducting research in the areas of comparative public administration, immigrant acceptance, and online hate speech. She is an avid traveler and loves all things outdoors. So today, Kelsey will be talking to us about the digital divide and how co-production plays out in digital equity endeavors. So Kelsey, I will be handing it over to you now.
Thank you so much for that. Can you see my slides?
Yes.
Just the slides so you can see?
Yes.
There, yeah.
It's big. Okay. 2 years of this and I'm still like never sure. But good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kelsey Edmond. I'm a PhD candidate in public policy at the University of Massachusetts, Boston. I'm really excited to be here today, and I want to thank the organizers of ASPA Cascade, as well as my fellow presenters. My presentation is titled Equality, the Role of Community Partners in Fostering Digital Equity. And today I'm going to share a portion of my dissertation findings, specifically on a theme that emerged so intensely that it really warranted its own paper or presentation. This is an inductive study that explores the role that community-based organizations play in mitigating the digital divide. So this is a practical review of collaborative efforts between different levels of governments, as well as between governments and other organizations. And it's a case study related to how local government has the ability to positively engage communities and expand democratic practices. And to demonstrate that, I used the digital divide as the policy medium to explore and observe these phenomena, and the city of Boston as my research setting. Oh, sorry. So a quick overview of my presentation today. I will give a brief background of the digital divide. This policy issue will be grounded in the theoretical framework of co-production, which I will further elaborate on my research questions and the methods that I use to address that question. I'll talk about how I collected and analyzed the data, major findings that came out of the analysis, and then finally the practical implications of this research. So the digital divide refers to the social stratification due to an unequal ability to access, adapt, and create knowledge via the use of information and communication technologies. Digital haves are individuals who have access to a physical device, an affordable internet subscription, and a strong digital skill set. And closing the digital divide is really crucial to promoting social justice and racial equity, as digital exclusion means that disenfranchised communities would be further left behind without access to online resources for education, communication, healthcare, just a general gateway to a better quality of life. And because the divide is structured within those three domains that I just mentioned, and you really need all three to have an effectively digitally connected person, policy solutions come from differing sources, which emulates this theory of co-production. Co-production is a process through which inputs used to produce a good or service are contributed by entities who are not in the same organization. And this requires strong collaborative efforts between local, state, and federal governments. Nabachi et al. Distinguish 4 phases of the cycle in which co-production may occur, and those are co-commission, co-design, co-delivery, and co-assessment. And co-commission groups those activities that are aimed at strategically identifying and prioritizing needed public services, outcomes, and users. So this phase really seeks to understand what needs to be delivered to whom to achieve what outcomes. Co-design captures all of those activities that incorporate inputs from users in their communities into the operations and really the decision-making regarding public services. Co-design improves the performance of existing public services by actively involving the service user in the design, in the evaluation, or in the implementation. And co-delivery refers to the joint effort at the point of delivery of services and really centers on quality and efficiency improvements. And lastly, co-assessment categorizes the monitoring and evaluation of public services. It concerns activities that have already been taking place in which results are used to rethink or improve services or processes. So overall, a co-commissioning process would produce a list of priorities or needs. A co-design process would produce a roadmap or a plan or some form of arrangement. A co-delivery process would produce a good or service, and also a co-assessment process would produce some monitoring protocol or evaluation. As the digital divide exacerbated amid the COVID-19 pandemic and citizens faced new financial and social constraints, municipal governments at the same time were also being pushed to administrative capacities. And so this was an impetus really for policymakers to shift away from more traditional policy processes and adopt more collaborative approaches. Therefore, this co-productive framework helps answer my research question, what is the role of community partners in fostering digital equity? And to address that question, I conducted 11 semi-structured qualitative interviews with City of Boston policymakers. Respondents were a mixture of city department officials, nonprofit leaders, library professionals, or community stakeholders. And I transcribed and coded the interviews using open and axial coding techniques, meaning I generated open codes and then positioned those themes within the theoretical model. To counter any threats to validity, I did a member checking exercise with my participants, where I returned to them with major themes and asked them to assess their accuracy and let me know if I missed anything glaring or didn't include something that was a huge part of their lived experience. And interviews revealed that co-production was a vital part of coping with the COVID-19 pandemic and the digital divide in the city of Boston. Furthermore, the data suggests that specifically community-based organizations played a crucial role at each stage of the co-production cycle. So for example, a technology-based nonprofit stated, our program partners are organizations on the ground in the neighborhoods where we are. They have trust with the members of the community, and they ask questions like, what resources do you want or need? Or if that's too specific of a question, tell me about your needs in general. And a similar sentiment was shared by a city government employee who stated, we're not out in the community every day, so we look to the organizations that work with these communities to tell us what they need. Almost every single respondent that I spoke with shared that they relied on community organizations who have direct day-to-day contact with the constituency that they serve to help explore and understand specific needs. And in terms of taking those needs and converting them into policy solutions, the data suggests that community organizations don't always have a direct role in the policy design, but more times than not, they are included in decision-making. For example, a nonprofit that provides digital literacy training stated, the designing of the courses is really a two-way street. All of that is designed with our learners' input and our partners' input. So there are definitely some instances where community organizations are playing a direct role in designing those policy solutions. The co-delivery portion of the policymaking cycle is probably where the community-based organizations shine the most. For example, a library representative stated that hotspots were distributed to over 15 community organizations and city departments. Our partners use these to empower youth organizers, provide connections to public housing residents, connect farmers market and food pantry clients with easy access to SNAP and online recipes, and make telehealth a reality for our most vulnerable neighbors, offer digital English classes available for Afghan refugees, and much more. So this shows that when community organizations are part of the service delivery aspect, they're able to put the resources to use in a way that makes the most sense for the context and in a way that has the biggest impact. They also simply provide opportunities for individuals to get connected that wouldn't exist otherwise. For example, a city official stated that we have community partners who offered to accept shipments on behalf of people in their network and then push it forward. Not every organization can do that. So even just by accepting shipments, like literal mail of Chromebooks or hotspots or other materials, makes a huge difference in this solution generating cycle. And lastly, co-assessment is probably the least thought out phase of the policy cycle, at least specific to the digital divide and specific to during COVID-19. So community organizations are really crucial in ensuring that evaluations even begin to happen in the first place. One local government official said, we have measured our success based on how well our solutions are working for our departments who are working with the community. Their success or their struggles, we piggyback off of. So without including community organizations in this step, sometimes it just won't even get done at all. So I like to revisit the research question to further contextualize the findings. So what is the role of community partners in bridging the digital divide? In the context of Boston, digital equity work does not happen effectively without the local on-the-ground piece built into the model. Community organizations who prior to the pandemic were not focusing this much on this policy issue help bridge the digital divide in a number of ways. In the co-commission stage, they gather and relay specific contextual needs to the city. In the co-design phase, community organizations can provide input in solution creation. Co-delivery ensures that resources are not only actually reaching citizens by physically disseminating the items or the information, but the community organizations are also ensuring that those resources are implemented in the most effective and culturally competent way. And in the co-assessment phase, in many cases, community organizations provide a starting point for evaluations to occur. So too often, well-intentioned social change initiatives fail because members of the affected population are not at the table. So to conclude, I'll share some policy recommendations that are come out of this research. Partnerships with community organizations should absolutely continue, and city departments should consider establishing monthly meetings or some type of reporting structure if they're not already, to really help synthesize efforts, standardize metrics, and monitor progress over time. And for those that are on the ground leading digital equity efforts, they would also benefit from a learning community that provides a venue to share lessons learned, problem solving, expanding networks, and cultivate new thinking. So in conclusion, digital equity innovation has the potential to significantly improve outcomes in community health, education, support for older adults, small business assistance, workforce development, and so much more, which overall promotes democracy and community through public administration, which is the exact theme of this symposium. So thank you so much for your time, and I look forward to any questions or any discussion.
All right, thank you so much, Kelsey. Since it is, oh, look at Jennifer Martinez's headshot there. I don't, that's going to be recorded now, but I'm very impressed by this headshot. So we're just going to open it up for questions since it's such a small group. I'll just ask you all to bring your questions forward to Kelsey. I'll start because I'm just curious as a student myself, and we're here for peer-to-peer learning. When it comes to, well, first off, I love that you found that there are several dimensions to co-production, and there's different ways that there's different types of like co-production, essentially continuums that can happen. Related to your ending point where you said that the organizations would benefit essentially from feedback loops. Since part of your dissertation was so community involved, how are you planning on disseminating the results back to the community and possibly to others who may benefit from hearing what would benefit those organizations?
Yeah, thanks, Dan. That's a great question that I'll admit I haven't thought too much about yet. I do have some asks out to community organizations to interview for my dissertation, and just beginning those relationships with them kind of helps keep them in the loop for further down the line. A lot of people that I've already spoken with have said, yeah, like send me your dissertation when you're done. And I'm like, I don't know if you want that, but I can definitely, send you things as I work through this. So I think something that I can just do personally is create these relationships with some of these on the ground communities, and kind of help make connections as I see possible.
So I'm hearing more of a convening role to get them talking to each other. Are you finding that they're not talking to each other much? That's what happens in Portland. So I'm just curious if that happens in Boston as well.
Yeah, and I don't think it's a, like a disinterest in speaking with one another. It's just that this policy issue kind of came on really hard and fast at the start of the pandemic, and everybody is kind of just learning as they go. And so I think the biggest issue is it's not always aware of who else is doing what and who else is facing the same issues that you might be facing. So definitely trying to kind of get more knowledge out in that regard.
And I think that's just a continuous issue. We have to continue to convene and member check and kind of try to help others with our knowledge and help them overcome these gaps. But excellent. What other questions do people have?
So I'll jump in. Hi, I'm Rebecca Craven, and until about 4 weeks ago, I was the technical implementation manager at the Oregon Broadband Office. So your presentation is specifically why I'm here. So thanks for tackling this issue. I appreciate it from a professional perspective and as a fellow student. Great to hear these kinds of things being discussed more often in these sorts of forums. The question that I have for you is, one of the things that I've been hearing through a lot of the work that I've been doing professionally is concerns from particularly constituents in those sort of unincorporated areas that aren't necessarily run by substantial city governments, substantial county governments, in the same way that some of our major cities are, that they don't necessarily feel super represented by a lot of the groups that are specifically focusing on digital equity. So I guess my question for you is what, where do you see that sort of approach to assess how community organizations focusing in this space align with, adequately represent, and kind of deal with some of those more individual constituent issues, classic how do interest groups represent the folks that they're intending to represent and align those values that way?
Yeah, thank you for your attendance and your question. If I can you kind of repeat your question once more?
Yeah, I guess what are you seeing or what are you researching as it relates to how those community organizations that you're focusing on, how they align with the sort of individuals that they are intending to represent as it comes to digital equity concerns, issues, et cetera?
Yeah, if I understand your question correctly, you're asking like how are these specific organizations bringing specific solutions to the actual people that are experiencing those issues. That is something I think that we'll uncover a little bit more as I do interviews with the actual organizations, but I do know that a lot of organizations have started to kind of pivot their plans a bit as more federal legislation has come out. So for example, we now have the ACP, the Affordable Connectivity Program, which is a federally based subsidy that allows people to get almost free or very subsidized internet in their home. And at first, I know organizations were kind of working on paying for internet for themselves, but now it's a huge effort to channel people to apply for that program instead. So I think I have been noticing those changes of how these organizations are specifically addressing the issues of the communities that they serve. But I think it's something we won't really know too much about until kind of more time has passed.
It makes sense. Thank you.
I'll jump in if there's not another question in the audience. Hi, I'm Jennifer. Nice to meet you. A great presentation. So I thought your framework was really helpful in understanding the different roles community-based organizations and governments are using, right, to co-create and really provide goods, right? Provide goods, provision goods. My question was related to, and I might have missed this in your presentation, these community-based organizations are all based to support this specific need, or do they also do other work, or advocacy work or other support in their nonprofit responsibilities?
Yeah, thank you for your question, and nice to meet you. So these organizations actually do not have a priority mission of connecting people digitally. For example, one I interviewed is called English for New Bostonians, and they are a nonprofit specifically tailored to provide English classes for immigrants in the Boston area. And it wasn't until the pandemic hit that they had to flip all of their classes online and realized that a huge chunk of their population was unable to continue the coursework because it was online. So they immediately kind of changed their models to get people connected, get people devices, teach people how to sign on and use Zoom and use email and things like that. So for the most part, this is just the digital equity piece is the new subsidiary part of their actual mission. It's not, not what they were originally incorporated to tackle at all. So that's kind of another reason why this is so important. And it's really, really important to be paying attention to these organizations because they don't have a background in this and they don't necessarily have the resources, but they are kind of partnering with them is kind of the best chance.
Thank you so much. And I asked this because I've noticed in the pandemic here in Oregon as well, right? Community-based organizations played a critical role with communities that might be traditionally marginalized, either because of language or, different exclusions that occur. And I guess just to follow up with the more philosophical question here, I've been thinking a lot about the role of the domestication of these community-based organizations, right? Because now they don't have time to work on their core mission. So I wanted to ask you, what are your thoughts around that? What did that come up in your interviews at all in terms of now capacity has sort of shifted to do the role of the state and not doing some of that civic capacity work?
Yeah, that is one of the things I am kind of capturing are these like cost benefits to co-producing and what are the challenges in co-creation. And a big theme was just general COVID related staffing shortages, burnout, in-person limitations, things like that. So that's definitely arisen as a concern for a lot of these organizations that they don't have the capacity they used to, but at the same time, there's been this is an issue that's now funded in ways that it's never been funded before. So there's this agenda setting piece to where now this is getting attention that previously it had never received. So I think it kind of balances out to where there's enough supports around that they can still carry out their main nonprofit mission, but still have this be a piece of it.
Thank you so much.
This is excellent, great conversation. And my mind is just going in a dozen directions of just what we could discuss. I could stay here forever talking about this. Does anyone have any other questions about Kelsey's presentation in this moment? If not, we'll move on to David's presentation, which starts to delve into some of those questions. How do you engage the community? So I think that was an excellent launch into our next presenter. So David Okereke is a PhD candidate in the Center for Public Administration and Policy at the School of Public and International Affairs at Virginia Tech. His research focus includes regional economic development, tax credit policy, and neighborhood revitalization, intergovernmental collaboration and networks, with a particular interest in promoting social equity. His current research explores the relationship of neighborhood revitalization tax credits on subjective well-being in U.S. low-income neighborhoods. The study examines how perceived satisfaction or happiness from individuals' interaction with local policy interventions influences people's quality of life experience. Prior to pursuing the PhD program, David has been involved in impact evaluation of public policy interventions and geographic information systems mapping, visualization of neighborhood housing projects in distressed cities. So without further ado, let's hear from David related to subjective well-being.
Can I share the slides or something? Yep.
Yes.
Yes, you have share access.
Okay,
So just
yeah,
go ahead and
thank you.
share.
Okay. Okay, yeah. Thank you so much for having me, and thank you everyone for coming out to listen to this. It's kind of interesting to me, but I also at the same time just want to let you all know that this is second part of my research concerning looking at subjective well-being and looking at the interaction of local residents to public policy at the local level. So today, looking at the effect of local policy intervention on subjective well-being, looking at it from the same lens that I've been doing throughout my research, which is looking at tax credit policy or neighborhood revitalization. Why am I interested in this is, these are kind of my agenda today, just looking at my motivation, framing the policy. I'm also just looking at the big question I'm asking, the research question, methods, framework, and limitation. So this is still work in progress because I'm not done with the analysis, and I also feel I should share up to the point. Why am I interested in this topic? So part of the problem is when you look at cities and counties, they kind of spend an estimate of 45 billion annually on tax incentive. They do that just to attract firms to create new jobs and invest within their local communities. But why still doing this? We found out like in 2020 report from the Economic Innovation Group using the Distress Community Index, the report found out that as at 2020, just a little, or actually there's no increase in income or reduction in poverty rate for 2/3 of America living in inner cities. And the report went ahead to say like people mostly in neighborhood of colors that lives in economically distressed locations will remain distressed over time. And trying to like look this down, so you could look at the federal spending on tax incentives across the country is about 15 billion yearly. And when you begin to look at that and look at it to the state level, you also begin to see, like, for example, a state in New Jersey, like the state account, the municipals accounts for 25%, their 25% of revenue is from the state assistance, like in sense of state aid, state fundings, and tax incentives. Why is this also important? We can look at it again from the maps. When you look at the maps, this map is from the Distress Community Index. So what the Distress Community Index data does is it kind of uses 7 parameters, which is from the census data. He also used from community data to look at how cities and states shares their population in terms of distress and less distress. So what is interesting here, when you look at the graph, you begin to see like people that live in distressed cities. So distressed cities are like with the zip code. So we can actually look at people that earn less than certain amount, which this data looked at 37,000 across board. If you have anything less than that as income, household income, then you classify as distress. So when you look at this, you're saying like people at risk. First, let's even look at people that are prosperous. You see, like they've seen a significant improvement in their income. This is in their population, people they've actually increased. But when you look at the people on distress, it looks like nothing seems to have happened. And the interesting thing is that the data was run after 20 years. So the blue was run in 2020, and then in 2000, and then the other one was in 2020. So what this means is even people at risk may end up falling into distress because this data was run before the COVID. So, and we're anticipating like the issue of the COVID would have widened the gap. The next is to look at the framework. So another way to look at trying to create solutions to this part of the problem is the whole idea like, okay, why not we create policy that target people that are at risk or people that are already distressed? And to do that, from both the city level to municipal to county and state, we begin to see like a whole lot of people looking at tax incentives as a way of creating a new policy. So the assumption for the tax incentive is 2 things. Is if we target disadvantaged neighborhoods, we are going to improve the neighborhoods and also increase the quality of life of residents. And the best way to do that is draw a policy that bring in new firms, create jobs, and also like create local opportunities. My study actually is focusing more on looking at New Jersey in the sense that New Jersey has like a long interaction with the tax revitalization state policy. They have it, they rank their municipals in terms of stress level and distress level. And they've been doing this for the past 20 something years. I have a data that ran from 1996 to 2018. So that is a significant data to use to work. And in New Jersey, there's also a big divide in terms of distress and non-distress. So if you look at the municipalities that are down south, most of them are actually like having these economic distress issues. And to do that, the state has applied different kind of tax incentives. The most common one, which is the one I'm looking at right now, is the one that was enacted in 2002 called the Neighborhood Revitalization Tax Credit. When looking at that, that actually take me to begin to ask questions that why don't we begin to consider the local effort? What are those local efforts? Based on my first analysis I actually looked at the economic index, looking at the benefits for residents. And what we found out in that study was there were actually no significant impact of the benefits to residents, especially community residents that reside in the zip codes that we classify as distress. So to do this now, the next question is it not possible for we to redefine local effort? And how do we redefine local effort? In the sense of looking at it at quality of life experience of residents. So my study began to recognize the new roles community-based organizations plays in local neighborhoods. They've embedded in these communities, and they also like kind of playing a state role, unlike looking at the state actor. So in New Jersey, for instance, we have this community organization being able to like plan a revitalization activity, source for some of the fund and get other benefit from the state and then do the implementation either between the state or with the municipal authorities. Another thing that interests me is to begin to ask questions that has to do with subjective well-being. So by subjective well-being, we are looking at a self-reported assessment of how people feel over time based on their life experience. And it's interesting to understand that it can be referred to different things. It could be referred to like people level of happiness. It could also be seen as people quality of life, overall happiness, livability, or life satisfaction. I think the most common use is life satisfaction. The next slide for me was to begin to look at the issues of the why questions. There are different whys that comes across in my study so far. One is, why is tax incentives the most frequent use strategy? Since based on my previous study, I found out that it's statistically significant, but has no practical impact in community residents' life. And another study again shows that even having an additional local tax or state tax incentive for neighborhood actually does not improve socioeconomic indicators among residents. Then looking more into the community-based organizations that are embedded in the neighborhoods, we begin to see like some have more successful outcome and others don't. And finally, my why question is, why don't we across board include subjective well-being, especially in policies that seek to improve residents' quality of life? And to do that in this study, I'm asking a question, and the question is there a relationship between neighborhood revitalization tax credit policy and subjective well-being of neighborhood residents? And to dive into this more is just kind of conceptualize more what is subjective well-being. Why are we using subjective well-being? So there are different reasons, especially in the public policies and the public administration scholarship. We begin to see like a change. This change started from the international scene, where we begin to see like policy experts and government officials from European countries begin to question over-dependency in economic data in assessing the influence or interaction of public policy across individuals. One of the ways we are looking at that, if you look at it in the PM policies, that I'm beginning to question like, why don't we consider happiness as one of the main public policy goals? And when you look at also like the significant gap between the economic indicator and individual well-being, we begin to like ask questions about, is there a better measurement that is over time going to like shows how people perceive local policy? And if those measurements shows that, will there be a way that we can understand or demonstrate if those patterns of individuals' interactions at those local level can shape their quality of life, or the influence policy outcomes at those levels? So the next thing for me was kind of look at how this tied to most of the literature this study is looking at. The study actually had like, in part of looking at those literatures, 4 things that came out strong for me were, when you look at impact evaluation literature, trying to see like how these tax incentives impact residents or impact cities and communities. Most scholars, we keep on saying that the impact is kind of very elusive, and there's so much of a dependency on economic indicators. Then if you look at it from the urban scholarship, is begin to just look at it at the facade and the physical transformation of the environment without looking at the community residents. How are their lives changing? What are the improvements based on the interactions with these policies? And also, I also look at Campbell, because Campbell do have like a very structured satisfaction measurement, which it calls life satisfaction model. So one issue with life satisfaction model that has been used over time by different scholars that are interested in measuring how people perceive programs is kind of this model is constructed in a very linear way. It's designed in a simple assumption that people are all rational, and that based on how they perceive things, they're going to take a rational decision. But my study kind of created a different variable, which is a mediating variable that I call socioeconomic status and opportunity to acquire resources as the interaction that can actually influence how people perceive every kind of policy that they interact with. And in that kind of, in my ongoing research now, I came up with few propositions, but the argument for me is like, the argument is simple for me in the sense that I was saying, like, if people have a very high socioeconomic status and they also have a very high opportunity to acquire resources, they're going to have maximum level of satisfaction. But in situations where people have low socioeconomic status, and they also have very low opportunity to acquire resources, their life satisfaction level will be at the lowest point. And how do they get this? This can be like, what are the local resources? What are the opportunities? What are the access to jobs? And also, what are the access of the policy in not just their life, but to their socioeconomic network? Their family, are they happy? Are they happy with the way the policy is designed? So to measure all this, I have a way that I did that, because I can kind of using a mixed methodology in this research. It's still very exploratory because I'm focusing using a case study approach, looking at New Jersey. And I have 2 sources of data. One is the secondary data, which is from the state, and the primary data is still ongoing, though I have like few descriptive analysis. But this data is being sorted from like a survey from neighborhood residents, community-based organization officials, and municipal government officials too. In this ongoing one, so my unit of analysis is looking at neighborhoods as a primary one. I also have different levels, looking mostly on individuals, also looking at household, and then neighborhood association, the CBOs. So my key independent variable is my subjective well-being. How am I going to measure the subjective well-being? I have that in the next slides, but subjective well-being, like I said, is looking at people perceive assessments in terms of how satisfied they are to different programs and outcomes of events that happen within their space. So I have few key indicators like independent variable, the socioeconomic status, and resource acquisition. And then the voice of the community and the sense of the community is also very key as a measure that will help measure how people perceive policies and to see if they are satisfied with it or not. So I do have all the controls from income to gender to race, and length of residence is also important because I'm focusing on looking at people that have lived in those neighborhoods beyond 5 years. I'm also looking at the association they have with most of the neighborhood organizations, because one of the most research shows that these community-based organizations are embedded in the communities, and because of that, they have good relationships. So I'm hoping to see how that works. So I have two working hypotheses for this study. One of the biggest arguments is I'm arguing that neighborhoods that have experienced revitalization tax credit policy, who also identify as low socioeconomic status, and they have a very low opportunity to acquire resources, we report a lower subjective well-being than other residents of the same neighborhood. I also look at my first one, which also shows that neighborhoods that report higher subjective well-being are residents that are living in such neighborhoods. So if they are living in neighborhoods that are classified as distressed, they should be able to report a higher subjective well-being than those not living in such neighborhoods. Yeah, using all the basic analysis, t-tests and my regressions, trying to control for the fixed methods. And then the key construct that I'm interested in discussing for this study, the subjective well-being is going to be like, I'm using like a scale where people record 1 to 5, where 1 is extremely dissatisfied and 5 is extremely satisfied. For the socioeconomic status and resource sufficiency or ability to acquire resources, this is going to be done as an index from the outcomes of people's socioeconomic status. So I'm using 2 ways to get this. I'm using the census data and American Community Survey. And I'm also, from part of the survey that I sent, I'm also using that to like look at what their current status is, and that will make me be able to index if they have the opportunity to acquire resources and their current socioeconomic status. So yes, like I start in saying, like this part of this work is still ongoing. I haven't been able to like complete all my analysis on that because I'm still getting more response from data. But I still have full limitations, which also shows like I'm collecting data from state level. So there's also like, because I'm doing like a case study, I feel like it's still going to be limited for me to like make so much causal claims at this point. And I'm also like, at this point, I'm still like at less than like 60% response. So we're still expecting this. Yeah, thank you. And
Thank you, David. The concept of quality of life and what counts as happiness is such a huge topic. Even like my students were just discussing it the other day. How do you measure that? How do you know what's best for the people? And it sounds like maybe some co-production could be more robust with your study. So we'll open this up to some questions for David's presentation. What questions do you all have?
Hi, David. Great presentation. I really
thank you.
don't have a question. I just want to praise you for having this really cool tool that can measure well-being, subjective well-being, however we want to define it at the local level. I'm just kind of thinking back of when I started my PhD program. I was also wanting to take this direction of figuring out how to measure well-being at the local level, but yeah, it became really difficult, right? There's a lot of quality of life measures at the country level,
Yeah.
right? Different different quality of life reports that come out. So I think this is a really helpful tool. And I guess just to give you a question is, can you foresee or can you envision this tool be packaged in a way that can be applied in other places and other local communities?
Absolutely, yeah. Thank you first for the question. That's good. So yeah, so what my measure does is it's kind of not doing something new. I took the same scale that has been used outside internationally. So we know we have like different, like World Value Society has happiness index. So we have this happiness index, and what it does is it measures from different categories. They look at family, social, economic, leisure, health, financial. And what it does is still the same thing like my study is doing. And it's looked at how people perceive their experience over time at a particular question. So if we're deciding to implement a policy, I will want to know if the policy is going to work or not. We also need to begin to understand if the policy is going to increase people's level of happiness or not. And when you ask them those questions and you have those index, then you'll be able to like interpret the outcome or be able to forecast if the policy will work or not. So back to your question, yes, it's actually going to work for different local residents and other forms of communities too. Yeah.
I also just wanted to add, I see the utility in this in especially applying this model to areas that have maybe been neglected by government, such as areas, I'm thinking of one particular area in the city of Orlando, Florida, that has been redlined. So it's predominantly Black. And in the year 2000, they released a lot of funding into the neighborhood to revitalize it.
Yeah.
And I think what actually happened was gentrification instead of contributing to the well-being of the residents. So I see this as a tool that could be used in areas to essentially critique the revitalization efforts and also offer some more paths forward when we talk about things such as social equity. Because if you start looking at, well, what are different groups experiencing in that area despite our intentions, it's looking at the outcomes versus the outputs. So
Yeah.
I think, as I'm also someone who I spent several times looking for quality of life measures before, and I felt like none of them were representative. So I appreciate this this more critical use of it. So excellent work. Does anybody else have any questions before we move on to Ina?
Yes, just a small comment. I was like really intrigued that one of the questions that I saw in your presentation regarding why can't we consider happiness as the goal of the public policies?
Yes.
I don't think this is possible. Like, I have seen a lot of public administration in different countries, and it's kind of difficult to aim for the happiness. Like the public administration cannot do this. They can aim for good services, better quality of life, but it is kind of difficult to put specific actions to to make people happier.
Yeah,
know.
that is true. But I think of recent we've been seeing like public administration scholars trying to like dive into happiness. So happiness has been moving, is kind of new to the field, but they've used it in economics, psychology, and other. But we're seeing like few scholars trying to like look at happiness and put it back into the field as a way that can not just only help us in looking at these interactions, but it's also going to help us to like design some policies and implement those policies too. Because if actually like every human being is seeking happiness, how do you design programs and policies that will not create a significant level of happiness, then it becomes issues of desire. Yeah, like people really have to look at that. So hopefully it's going to get to that point. I hope so.
I see a connection to Kelsey's presentation about needs and knowing the needs of the community.
Yes.
So I think the happiness, and you would know better than I, but I believe that the infusion of happiness and quality of life and well-being has been largely lacking from the economic sphere. And then people like Ostrom, who Kelsey quoted or cited, brought in different measures of, well, if we're only looking at like a cost benefit analysis and we're only looking at purely economic efficiency, then we're missing a lot about the lives of people who are the recipients or the people who are the subjects of these policies. So I think happiness is kind of a stand-in for those general quality of life measures, and that happiness is more of that amorphous thing that we should all strive to bring our communities to, but it encourages us to think more about individual needs and their quality of life more than the traditional public policy analysis. And also David Vincent, our one of our board members, has a question / suggestion for you related to your equation model.
Yes, kind of trying to reply him at the same time, but I actually haven't used consider using structural equation model, but what I did in a previous study was I used a difference in difference method, because when you try to look at policy, you want to look at the change over time before the policy and in between the policy. So that's what I did, but I think I'm going to look at this. Really. Thank you, Vincent, for the suggestion. Yes, I will. I'll look at it.
Thank you, Vincent. Vincent is a school teacher, so he's
okay,
at work right now, which is why he's not engaging. I'll be happy to share his info so you can follow up with him. Okay, well, thank you. All great discussion, and any other questions or comments that come up for any of these presentations we can handle at the end, but we'll move on to Ina. So Ina Kokedhima is a graduate Fulbright student from Albania, studying for a Master's of Public Administration with a specialization in global leadership and management at Portland State University. Her professional experience in public administration focused on ensuring the constitutional rights for protection, social inclusion, and equal opportunities for disadvantaged groups such as women, LGBTQ, and children. Apart from the experience in public administration, Mrs. Kokedhima has developed her managerial and analytical skills in European policies thanks to her studies at École Nationale d'Administration, sorry if I butchered that, and Sciences Po in Paris, as well as at College of Europe in Bruges. Her professional experience also involves conducting research in the field of public administration, education, vocational education training, and leading the work of the Sweden Institute of Alumni Network in Albania for 2 years. So Ina's going to talk to us today about what happens when you try to infuse a bottom-up approach in a society that is used to a top-down approach. So how do you start infusing democratic principles and leadership into a previously communist country? So Ina, to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for this opportunity. It's always a pleasure for me to take part in such kind of meetings, because it serves my aim for being here, for studying here, and investing almost 1 year now in for my professional and educational development. My presentation is focused actually on my aim, like why I am here and why I was chosen from the public administration to be here, to be a Fulbright student, and to follow this this master degree. I'm going to share real quick my presentation with you. So I wanted to talk about the leaders in the public administration and how these leaders can influence in promoting democracy and sometimes postponing democracy in some countries, especially for the Western Balkans countries. Do we need leaders and why we need leaders in the public administration? It's like the most easy question that I have done to myself when I started to prepare my thesis for this program. The interesting thing that I found regarding the leadership is that there is no agreed definition about the leadership. Like every state, every country are using leadership based on their culture, based on their structure, and based on their own legislation. Most of the articles and research are focusing more on the challenges and the characteristics of the leaders in the public administration. I have learned by heart how a leader should be in the public administration, how he or she would look like, what should be like his skills and abilities. And also, what are the challenges that they are facing as leaders in the public administration? And the COVID situation showed us that some leaders in the public administrations are not as talented or skilled to manage a crisis during the pandemic. We're going to talk a little about this later. The most frequent definition of a leadership problem, it's a leader problem. And the leader problem is coming from the person that is in charge, such as chairperson, manager, even the team leaders in a specific unit or department. One profit company in Europe called A Politician was founded by the European Union to do a study and to find the 100 future leaders in the world. And as you can see, most of the 100 future leaders of the world for the next generation, I had the opportunity to check them all, but I am showing you only the ones that I found more interesting, are politicians. They have like a political career. Only one of them was consider a future leader that was coming from the public administration, 1 in 100 names. So this is not very good data for our future and for our public administration. Leadership, it belongs to all the power of the administration, starting from the agencies to the smallest unit of a public administration. And should not be observed only through the prism of political leadership. We have to think regarding the beyond the apparent restrictions of their current role, and they have to think the leaders in the public administration using the bird's eye perspective, like to see the things from a high level, not always from the ground level. We may not have any definition about about the leadership in the public administration, but authors argue that there are 4 groups of leadership concepts. The first one is leadership as a personal quality. The second one is leadership as a position, that it is related with the function that a leader is having in the public administration. The third one is leader as a process regarding his work in the public administration. And the last one is leadership as a guiding purpose. So the leaders in the public administration are working for a common good. Their priority is the community and making good public policies for their communities. US leaders in the US public administration and in the Western Balkans country. I started my thesis based on the simplest approach. Like the US government, it's well known about their bottom-up approach for promoting for promoting democracy. And with the help of the international organization, of course, they have strengthened the basis for democracy transition by providing technical assistance, by engaging the civil society, promoting female political participation, and involves the I'm sorry, and involve the different nationalities which live in US. But in the Western Balkans country and in Albania, the things are quite the opposite. We are using like the up-bottom approach. We are an ex-communist country, not only Albania, but also some other countries in the region. And how we consider this approach? We consider like countries that they have like 3 to 5 leaders in the governance or in the public administration who applies a centralized system when they are running the country. But we all know that good governance depends on a good leadership in the government institution. And a sustainable leadership is a fundamental driver of citizen trust in the public institution, because it provides for a professional administration, a responsive civil services, and it makes sure that the public services eventually deliver public value to the citizens. You may know, like most of you know, like the left side of the people on the slide, but you don't know like who are the people on the right side. So let me present them to you. The first one is the Prime Minister of Albania. The second one is the Prime Minister of Kosovo. I believe that we all know the relationship of US and Kosovo and how the US had influenced the promoting of democracy in Kosovo, and they have helped really a lot regarding the work that the current public administration is doing. We have the Serbian Prime Minister, and of course the Prime Minister from Montenegro. I wanted also to mention 2 other leaders. They are called unknown leaders in our region, and why they are leaders. Why I personally consider them as leader in promoting the democracy and helping the public administration. The first one is the US ambassador in Albania, which I have had like the opportunity to meet and discuss with her. And I am here because of this Fulbright program. So I was considered as one of the young leaders in the public administration. And this opportunity is for me proving them that I'm worth it. And when I will go back, I will try to lead some sector of the public administration. And the other one is the US ambassador in Kosovo, and his words and his recommendations and his reports and his advice, if we can put it this way, for the public administration in Kosovo has really influenced the way that things are working in Kosovo. Why do we need leaders in the public administration? For 3 main reasons: security, purpose, achievement. And these are related with Maslow's hierarchy of needs. We need leaders in the public administration so they can provide us security, safety, and to fulfill us like our physiological needs. We need them because they have like a purpose. I want to connect this with David's presentation regarding how can we consider happiness. Like their purpose is like to create a safe and well-being environment for their community. And also we need leaders so they can achieve growth and achievements for their community. So the country would have like a better economical and social services or health services, etc. but during COVID, something happened. All the leaders was faced like with a lot of challenges regarding how they should act in a situation where everything wasn't function as usually. The interest on public sector leadership has started since 1980s, but it was more pronounced from the years 2008 and till now. Researchers have pointed out that the environment structure, the ethical responsibilities, and the goals or the purpose of the public sector are different from the private sector. I would agree that there are some similarities between the public and private leadership, but they have differences regarding the impact of the leadership. Public services leadership deals with the complex stakeholders relationship with significant limitation in resource and ethical responsibilities. We know during COVID, the public sector changed overnight. They had all the employees at the local or state level have to work online. So the responsibilities for operationalizing, this change was to leave the public organization and placing an extra demand on public sector managers that were forced to quickly take decisions regardless of the scared situation or like the difficult working condition they were facing. The need for an effective and ethical public administration has been more pressing in a pandemic context because of the two main reasons. The leaders had to protect their people and have to make sure to maintain the services were delivered to everyone. So who was the best leader? How should be a leader? Who is the best leader during COVID, and not only, but during the crisis that the state or the public administration is focusing? From the studies, I have found that the best leader should have an integrated leadership style, gathering transformational, transactional, shared and ethical leadership. So the leaders today should be integrated leader, should have an integrated leadership style, and also they should strengthen their skills in the e-leadership. The digitalization during the last 2 years, it have changed all the definition of the leadership. So the leader should not be like the one traditional leader that we know, that he is always working with the people, but he or she should have also like e-leadership skills to manage situation during online meetings, during the delivery of the services online, and using different systems that public administration in different countries were obligated to create and to work during the COVID. I'm not sure if we have leaders in the public administration in my country. I try to find here some leaders on the local level, but I didn't find any leaders. I found only persons that have made different changes in the public administration, but they weren't considered leaders. So I'm still looking, and I'm really hope that I would, till the end of my program, I would have answered my my question. Thank you so much.
Thank you. That's good.
Excellent, Ina. Thank you so much. Lots to think about. This is such a great case study in when you're promoting democracy in other places. How do you do the necessary institutional changes and also the changes of mission in that same space? So I really love the infusion of both org theory and also democratic theory. That's really great. All right, we have about 9 minutes left. So what questions or comments do we have for Ina?
I thank you so much for the comment. And that's also what I have come to understand from my experience here. My aim was to find something different, to find a model that I can use like in my home country or in the region. But it seems like the public administration is the same all over the world.
Yeah.
And that's so sad.
Yeah, there's a lot of similar issues. There's a book that I will recommend to you offline about
Yes,
comparative
yeah.
public administration, because it kind of outlines what democracy and public administration look like in different regimes, and it's separated by length of time a certain country has had a certain regime, and what that looks like for administration. So wonderful. What other questions and comments do we have? So, let me ask you this. So you're mentioning Maslow's hierarchy of needs and how it's the leader's responsibility to promote that. Now, kind of to both David and Kelsey's presentations, there's different needs, and the needs happen, they're defined differently for different people. So what do you think the leader's role in, this is just a general question, but what do you think and this could be anybody, but what do you think the leader of an organization's role is? So we often talk about internally, right, that it's the leader's role to help their employees, but what do you think the public manager's role is in promoting needs? What do you think their role is in helping other community, like the rest of the community at large, meet their needs?
I truly believe that one of the things that I have learned from US is that public administration is for the people and by the people. So if the public administration don't have this to consideration, they would be successful the first year, the second year, third year. But I'm not sure what is going to happen after 5 years. Would be like they able to identify the needs of the community, or will they be like burnout because of their job, or because they won't feel any more satisfaction regarding their job? But I truly believe that the public administration work should be for the people and should be driven by the people. That was my personal motive, and I stopped that after I found out that I was burned out from my job, and I couldn't think clear, and I couldn't make any more decision regarding the issue that I was working on. And that was because of a bad leader.
So what I'm hearing is that part of a democratic society, and that's what I've been hearing from all three of your presentations, is that we are ultimately accountable to the community and to the public. That is who we owe our top accountability to. But then other issues such as how policies are designed or implemented or deployed, or how leadership impacts the implementation of those policies, are all barriers to promoting, or maybe not barriers, but road bumps, some speed bumps that we have to navigate as public practitioners when we are trying to ensure a democratically accountable administration to the community. So excellent.
You
I've done
know,
a lot
I,
of thinking for this Friday. Yes, Kelsey.
I'm sorry. I just wanted to say I really liked your section on how leadership drastically changed amid the COVID-19 pandemic. And it's a really fascinating case study to observe leadership in. And I'm wondering if you think it's possible to use like COVID case counts by country as a proxy measure for successful leadership. And just if you've thought about that, or I think that's possible.
Yes, I have. And I'm going to use not only the COVID cases, but I want to study specifically the decision of the Florida. They had like they had a leader on their own regarding like the measures that have taken regarding COVID. So that would be like something very interesting to compare with the rest of United States. My study is going to focus on the US leaders. So
Okay.
Well, as you know, I have several examples to share with you from Florida. So if you ever need resources, let me know. Because yes, Florida and other, just because of our federal list nature, some states in America handled COVID differently. So I think that would be a great study to look at how leadership and the impacted the way COVID was governed, because it's very different. Just full disclosure for anyone watching this, I live half-time in Oregon, half-time in Florida. And so I saw the comparisons in real time. So very interesting stuff. But this has just been wonderful. And thanks to you three. Thank you for getting our thinking started about for the annual conference, the ASPA annual conference, which will be held virtually this year. For those interested, we have extended an offer to our presenters to present on our panel, which will be similarly related to promoting democracy at all levels of government. So please, if you're watching this, please come see our panel in April. Also, these three presenters will receive complimentary membership to ASPA Cascade, and they will be invited to apply to be board members if they'd like. If anyone else here is interested in being a board member who is not, please feel free to see our application or nomination form. Otherwise, if there are any closing thoughts from anyone else, I will release you back to your day. But thank you so much to everybody for taking time out of your day to attend. Thank you for the thoughtful feedback and discussion. It's hard to get me up on a Friday, so I just think this is excellent. And hopefully you all benefited from the co-learning environment that happened here today. So thank you all. Jennifer will be following up with you, and have a great rest of your day.
thank you.
Thanks for coming, everyone. Take care.
Thank
Bye-bye
you.
now.
Everyone. Yeah, thank you.
Bye.